The chair recognizes the senator from Suffolk, Ms. Chang-Díaz.
It is a profound honor for me this afternoon to be here to present this bill and to ask my colleagues for their support in its passage. I want to start, as is traditional, but as is deeply called for in this moment, and as is the case with any real movement toward progress, by recognizing and acknowledging that I don't stand here alone in presenting this bill. There are many people, some here today, some not here today, who have worked and sweat and fought and wrangled so that we could get this bill to the floor today. And though this is just one step in a still long and arduous path, I want to thank those who have walked with me in this struggle over the past few years, and those who came before me for having committed themselves so wholly to the cause of justice. In particular, I want to thank the members of the transgender community who have shared your stories and your lives in order to push this issue forward. I want to thank the advocates from the Freedom Massachusetts Coalition for their dedication and resourcefulness, you, Mr. President, for your leadership on this issue, the gentleman from Belmont for your diligence in shepherding this bill through committee, the gentleman from the Berkshires as the first sponsor of the 2011 Transgender Equal Rights Bill, and all of my colleagues who have co-sponsored or advocated for this bill over the years. Thank you for your service. And I would be remiss also if I did not thank and recognize one of our former colleagues from over on the House side, Carl Shortino, who so ably shepherded the first chapter of this Transgender Equal Rights Bill through the House for its 2011 passage. Public accommodations, as this long list of thank yous makes plain, is not a new topic in our Commonwealth. Indeed, Massachusetts was the first state to enact a public accommodations law back in 1865 to prohibit discrimination on the basis of race or color in certain public spaces. It was this law that served as the basis for the first federal public accommodations law, the Civil Rights Act of 1875, and later on, the most renowned legislation on this matter, the one you all thought I was going to say the last two times, the Civil Rights Act of 1964. We also, as so many of us are proud of, made history in Massachusetts as the first state to legalize same-sex marriage. In Massachusetts, we are civil rights pioneers by nature. It is in our cultural DNA. And that's why it's particularly difficult to fathom how it is that in 2016 we are still fighting for public accommodations and full equality for transgender Bay Staters. Public accommodations are fundamental to equal rights in our society. They are the foundation upon which our everyday lives take place, where we eat when we're hungry, where we go for help when we're sick, where we spend our hard-earned money when we shop, play, travel. Public accommodations are so integral to how we function in the world that most of us don't even stop to think, and we don't have to stop to think about their significance. But anyone who lived through the civil rights movement of the 1950s or 60s or has seen the images from that era will know how fundamental public accommodations are to dignity and equality in America. We remember the bus boycotts and the lunch counter sit-ins of that era. We remember the segregated hospitals, the drinking fountains, and the restroom facilities. And surely we remember the arguments that kept those discriminatory practices codified for so many years. Integration is a threat to public health, a threat to public safety, segregationists of the day claimed. But the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act rectified these misgivings, and over the course of the last 5 decades, we have come to see not only the error of those arguments, but also the long-lasting and, in many cases, deeply devastating toll that that kind of discrimination fosters in our society. In 2011, the Commonwealth heeded these lessons, in part, by passing the Transgender Equal Rights Law. Discrimination on the basis of age, race, creed, color, national origin, sexual orientation, sex, marital status, and in most places, gender identity has already been prohibited in our state. But we are here today because we left that work unfinished. In excluding the transgender community from public accommodations protections, we have relegated its members to a second-class status, one that I believe and the supporters of this bill believe has no place in a just society and no place in the laws governing our state. We have witnessed over the last few months a scourge of discriminatory legislation cropping up across the country, most famously in North Carolina. Make no mistake, at the center of those policies are real people whose real lives and real livelihoods are being destroyed by bigotry. And we have also heard here in Massachusetts plenty of the same hateful, discriminatory, transphobic rhetoric that led those states to where they are now. As a parent, my heart aches for the children who are growing up facing discrimination for who they are, and it aches for the parents and the family members of those most affected because they are suffering right alongside their loved ones. It's time for us to forge a path out of this void. And it's time for us to catch up with the private sector, who on this issue, 2/3 of Fortune 500 companies already provide protections for their employees based on gender identity. And where here in the Commonwealth, businesses ranging from the Red Sox to General Electric, from Harvard Pilgrim to JP Licks, have endorsed these protections in this bill for their patrons and their employees. It's time for us to join the 17 other states and the District of Columbia in protecting transgender residents from discrimination in all our public spaces. And it's time for the Commonwealth to have the backs of the more than 200 cities and towns across the country, and 14 right here in our own backyard in Massachusetts, who have taken a stand for transgender rights by passing and implementing local ordinances parallel to the protections in this bill. No one deserves to be discriminated against for who they are, period. And it's our duty as legislators to ensure that those who do face discrimination have recourse. This bill closes that last door that's currently open to discrimination against transgender people in our state. The transgender community needs these protections, the business community wants these protections, and the legislature has a responsibility to provide these protections. I look forward to today's debate and to pushing transgender rights one step closer to finality here in the Commonwealth. Thank you, Mr. President.